Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is a Unscripted and Unchained first look at the Creatures of Thule Volume 2. So to continue from the last video that I had done over using Volume 1, have received the physical copies of both books now from Amazon. So you can order these on Amazon or you can get them for free from MYFAROG.org as a PDF. So without further ado, let me just show off the two physical copies and the real big surprise, a pleasant surprise that came once I opened up this package. So here we go with both physical copies. So this is the book that I'm going to go over today. So I have the PDF all fired up and ready to walk you through it. And here is the first volume. Now, the big surprise was the format and the size of these. I was really expecting the smaller pamphlet-sized books that back during MyFarOG 2.6, all of its splat books and supplements were, a much smaller book. These are exactly the same size as the core rulebook. So the reason why I really like that is that now it can go very easily on the shelf. I don't have to worry about these other books just kind of sliding in the back or just getting lost on the shelf someplace. And so I was really surprised, again, very pleasantly surprised that these are full-sized soft covers. Now, the other thing that I really like about the fact that of their size is that the images are much better looking at them in their physical form. I mean, I'll just show you that now you can see how much space is actually dedicated to them when you're seeing them off your screen as a PDF and just just here to see as a display, and the artwork is even more impressive in physical form. And I mean, these are just really cool images. So without further ado, let's start taking a look at the Creatures of Thule number 2. So here we have the PDF, and the one thing the PDF doesn't include is the is the cover art. So so just be prepared for that. That if you are going to just use the PDF, you're not going to have the cover art. So all of the interior art is done by Stefan Fetkovic. I said it the first time right, he said, and now I'm screwing it up because he told me the first time that I said it right. Stefan, sorry. We will move on and start taking a look. So here, many of these are the introduction to the 4th edition of MyFarOG. Prior to MyFarOG 4th edition, many of these creatures you did not have. And that's because MyFarOG took a more traditional fantasy setting when it went from really 2.7 to 3.0 and then 3.0 to 4.0. Many changes took place. More humanoid races were added in, and so you now have orcs, ogres, black orcs, common orcs, giant ogres, goblins, half orcs, hobgoblins, and so on and so on. So a lot of additions came in to this particular edition of MYFAROG. So we'll take a look at the orcs here. And so you have the orc species is made up of different races, from lesser goblins to giant ogres and everything in between. They live in caverns, dark forests, and old ruins, and their societies are like primitive tyrannies where might is right. The orcs are cousins of the Ettins, or they stem directly from them, as well as from the Arby Commissions from far away and long ago, and are normally not attacked by Ettins, and even seem to hold some power over them via their shamans. So they're really more akin to Ettins and giant folk and that kind of mythology and lore, and not at all connected to Sylvans or elves as you would see in Tolkien's writings. Now, lesser orcs are essentially goblins, all right, and they go into that here. So you have your common orcs, and you'll see the various various types of weapons and modifications to weapons, the type of helmets that they wore, and kind of a general look of each of those. Giant ogres, generally they're demi-humans, giant ogre leaders, giant ogre thieves, and you kind of see what they are. Now, just to give you an idea of the size differences, so a giant ogre is roughly 800 pounds, as opposed to orcs, which are about 160 pounds. And these orcs, black ogres and black orcs are basically a little bit larger at 200 pounds approximately. And black ogres are 450. So you can see that they're just a size difference between them. So goblins are significantly smaller, about 50 pounds smaller. And you'll see they have that much more almost impish-like look to them. Half-orcs are demi-humans, and they are 160 pounds. Half-orc leaders and chiefs. And you see they do start taking on some of their more human traits. Hobgoblins, also called greater orcs. So these run about 200 pounds as well. Lesser goblins are your more traditional goblins that you might recognize, and these are the smallest and weakest of all orc kind. Ogres, you're pushing about 400 pounds. Snow ogres, which are a new addition. So the snow ogre have black eyes, white fur, and live mainly in the high mountains, in natural caves or snow caves built by themselves, often alongside smaller, larger snow orcs or ogres. And so you can see here, you can kind of tell that they have like their white furs on them. Snow orcs, very similar. Wild orcs, about 320 pounds. So they're much larger, much more brutish looking. So trolls and MYFAROG are you're much more traditional trolls. So you'll see that there are There are corporal and corporeal. So trolls, they just have a much more traditional description to them. They are spirits. So unlike D&D trolls, let's say, these are much different in their appearance, and so these are ghastly whites and warrior whites. So whites like the Barrow Downs whites, corporeal trolls or ghastly whites. Um, Holder and ancient holders are also of the troll type creatures, so they are corporeal. Struggling with that word. Uh, Trolls, they don't always look so monstrous, as you can see here from this image. Then you have Gnar skeletons and ancient skeletons. These are the Walking Dead, and so basically your skeletons and very similar to zombies. You have your ghosts. You have sea wraiths. You have lantern men or will-o-wisps, specters. Now, some of these are from the older editions as well, and some are new introductions. So you have shadows and you have shadow sorcerers. So Entons, the hungry, the big eaters, are the descendants of the proto-Enton Ymir, um, who fell to earth from the sky like a falling star and then started to melt. All right, so Ymir, is more associated with like frost giants and the god of frost giants, and so Entons are kind of an offshoot of his line, let's say. So stone Entons. Again, it's really nice to have images so that you can actually see what they're supposed to look like. A fire Enton is essentially a Balrog. As you can see here, really cool image of one as well. So these are Krakens, and you can see here, general type, they fall under the Frost Enton category. Very Cthulhu mythos kind of looking creature. Let's see what this thing is. Oh, this is the Nyx. I know there were Nyx hounds earlier, but that might be in the other book. Giant worms. So here you're getting into your wingless dragons, which was a much more historical, mythological view of them. They didn't all have wings. They didn't get wings until kind of later on, and in many cases they had these kind of bat-like wings that are more so attached to their forearms, and that's it. So as you can see, I really think there's a value in buying the physical copies of these. As someone who writes MYFAROG adventures, it's always easier to have physical copies of the books and not have to flip through this here and while I'm writing to access the same information. Like everything in these two are in here, just without the images, and the fact that it's in a separate format allows for just a lot more ease when writing adventures, because now I can keep the rules in front of me on this and then turn to the page when I want to find what kind of a creature I want to include in the adventure at that point, and then later on I can go in and drop in the stat block and such. So really excited about getting back into writing this game. I am currently very, very close to finishing up an adventure that I wrote back in 2019 and even ran it several times back in 2019, 2020, that were using some of the older rules for dark elves or dwarves. And they were much different in 2.7 than they are in 4.0. So, but I'm not changing the nature of them to bring it up to 4.0, although you can still use 4.0 rules to run through that adventure. But that is an adventure that I expect to have on Drive-Through RPG by probably by next week. What I did was I took several adventures and consolidated them. Originally, it was like 2.5 adventures that were strung together, and now I've just compiled them up into one adventure module that's running between about 20 pages now. So even though it seems to be fairly short, it actually isn't as short when you're writing for this game system. You can have a lot of adventuring compacted into very few pages. So that's one of the advantages of this system, I think, is because you don't generate those large page counts, even though you have a lot of content included, and that's because the stat blocks in most cases you're going to save for the very end, and your layout for adventures are just basically dealing with the basic skill checks, their difficulty setting, and then any modifications or results of what the roles would be, and potentially like multi-layered results, which is another thing I really like about this system, because you do get into degrees of success or degrees of failure with this system. And so so that's another thing that I really like about MyFrog. So once again, thanks for joining. I hope you like this video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those in the comments section. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And if you want to know about more MyFrog content coming along, either from myself or from others, there is a MyFrog community over on Facebook. There's also MyFarog.org, and you can also find many of us if you just do the hashtag MyFrog, and you'll find us on Twitter as well, and ask any of us what exactly is going, if there's any organized play going on. Usually there's a game running someplace, running this system. And as I said, I'm looking to put out some more content, and that should be coming very shortly. So thanks for joining. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You have a great evening. Take care.